You're listening to the Men in Blazers Media Network, Suboptimal Radio.
My dad, who is a former lawyer, texted me when it came out and he goes, "Why is your name on this lawsuit?" I was like, "Don't ask me."
Dad, I'm fighting the good fight.
It's Rog back. Oh, my favourite time of the week. Another episode of the Women's Game presented by Paramount Plus. And what a seismic week it's been for football in this country. I'm referring, of course, to the landmark equal pay deal that was finally ratified by US Soccer last Wednesday after 6 long, grinding, occasionally dark years of legal battles between the US Women's National Team and the US Soccer Federation, which have honestly cast a shadow on the sport in our nation. When news about the agreement broke, like many of you, I felt an immense wave of joy, real pride, especially reading the great Becky Sauerbrunn statement on behalf of the US Women's National Team Players Association, and also a huge amount of relief. Relief for the women who fought so bloody hard for this, and even more so for the generations of women who'll come after them who won't have to fight this fight. Midge Purce perhaps put it best when she said, "I also feel a lot of pride when it comes to the young girls who are going to see this and grow up recognising their value instead of fighting to find it." And as those of you who know me will vouch, I'm not an optimistic person by nature, but this was news that filled even me with hope. And we will break this all down in the show to come. Details of the deal, how we got there, what it means. We're also going to talk that gargantuan Barcelona-Lyon Champions League final and all the storylines this week in the mighty NWSL. And here to enlighten me, I have a dynamic duo from the US Women's National Team backline, two genuinely remarkable human beings whose careers really represent the wealth of talent and intelligence we have on our hands with this new generation of US Women's National Team stars. First up, a player who's walked a truly singular, fascinating path to glory, electing to forgo the easy road into the pro game at age 21 by flinging herself out of her element and moving to Paris to play for PSG, announcing herself as a shutdown centre-back and true leader of any defence, now holding down the OL Reign backline from Tacoma. It's magnificent to welcome Alana Cook.
Hey Rog, happy to be here.
Oh, it is a joy to see you. And from your Chicago Red Stars, she was the youngest player on the roster when the US won the World Cup in 2019, aged just 20. She's since emerged to define herself as the heartbeat of that glorious Red Star team, even now while she's rehabbing from an ACL injury. Genuinely a joy to welcome Tierna Davidson.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is a joy to see you both. Tierna, Alana, we should say up front, you two go almost as far back together as the equal pay battle. You've journeyed from teammates at Stanford to become national team teammates. Opponents on the NWSL pitch, yes. As of today, you are officially podcasting partners. But if you could go back and say one thing to the college versions of each other about what you've learned on your journeys, what would it be?
Become friends faster, because you're going to have a great friendship eventually. You know, we both just took a little bit of time to warm up.
As a part of an inside joke, maybe refresh and remind yourself how to graph a cubic equation before you go to office hours. Our friendship kind of blossomed in CME 100. It's a math class at Stanford, and we spent a lot of time in office hours with a great TA called Greg. One time we were asking Greg a question about a certain problem, and he started out helping us out by asking us to graph an equation that was in our homework. And for some reason, both of us just blanked on how to graph a 2D equation that we were expected to be able to graph. Meanwhile, we're both relatively intelligent people, but we were sitting there absolutely dumbfounded and embarrassed because we couldn't go up to the board and graph this equation. We're like, "You're gonna do it?"
Yeah, we're both looking back and forth at each other, looking back and forth at our TA Greg, like, you got this one? Or, oh, it's my turn?
You got this one, I've got to say. Graphing cubic equations, possibly the most Stanford footballer problem ever. Also, the first time those three words have ever been used on a Men in Blazers podcast. I thought you were going to say that the thing you'd say to yourselves is never come on a podcast with a random bald bloke. But I want to say, you know, watching players who come through together, through the game, like you two have, I love it. And it always feels, and it's a projection, that there's a little bit of extra chemistry between the two players on the field. Is that just fan wishful thinking? Or internally, do you two feel it when you're playing together?
I would say I do. I think it's a level of comfort, a level of familiarity. We are not just convenience friends. We are best friends. But yeah, I absolutely do think that it's there.
Someone did once ask us, are you guys just friends by convenience? And we kind of had to explain, when I went to France, I was probably as far away as possible, and we still managed to communicate every day. When I'm on the field with Tierna, I honestly don't really have to think much about what she's going to do. I think we do genuinely have kind of that understanding. We think pretty similarly. So when she goes to do something, go to a tackle, hit a long ball, it's probably something that I can see she's going to do or know she's going to do from experience playing with her, but also we do just kind of think alike.
I do find once two defenders have worked out how to graph cubic equations together, there's very little chance any attacker has against the two of them. But I want to dive right into the equal pay discussion because there's so much to unpack. And you were both involved in the US Women's National Team Players Association negotiations. Tierna, you're a collective bargaining agreement committee member. Alana, you're a voting member. Can you quickly give us a sense of what that entails for people unfamiliar with the inner workings of the Players Association?
So for me, as a CBA committee member, I was part of a group of 8 players who were in on the negotiations with US Soccer. So it would be whoever could make the call out of the 8 of us, our executive director of our PA and our lawyers, along with members of US Soccer and their lawyers, hashing out the dirty details. So that was what I got to do for about a year.
Yeah, and I became a voting member after kind of the amount of roster call-ups this past year. So it was kind of, I think, just my job more so to stay informed. We had a bunch of different meetings with the voting members and with the team to kind of say, this is what we're fighting for. Does this align with what people want? This is kind of the angle that, we're fighting against. I think Tierna, obviously, we owe a great service to her and everyone who served on the committee and kind of pushed this forward. It was pretty special to get to vote on this and kind of be a part of something that players before me really pushed along and kind of started the movement for.
I mean, it's astounding to me, talking to anybody who was on that CBA committee, just how much time you as professional footballers, which is already a job and a half, have dedicated to this fight in terms of your own time, your own sacrifice.
All of us understood the importance of being in the Zoom room for these calls and for these negotiations. And I think that we had a really good group of players that would make time, but it really did require dedication from everyone and, running back from training and eating while you're still in your training gear, while getting on the call, and trying to multitask a little bit.
You both joined the national team a couple of years into this legal battle. The original equal pay complaint was filed by Carly Lloyd, Hope Solo, Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe, and the great Becky Sauerbrunn back in 2016. Tierna, you were one of the 28 players who signed on to the subsequent gender discrimination lawsuit in 2019, and you were the youngest player to do so at then just 20 years old. You're actually, I think, only 1 year into your career on the senior national team then. What discussions did you have with the older players when you were deciding whether or not to be part of it?
Honestly, probably didn't fully understand what I was signing on to, but more if the veterans think it's important and think it's worthwhile, absolutely, I will follow you into this deep dark cave and we're going to come out victorious. So I signed on to it, and then my dad, who is a former lawyer, texted me when it came out and he goes, "Why is your name on this lawsuit?" And I was like, "Don't ask me."
Dad, I'm fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
Well, the deal itself, it is a remarkable achievement, reaching a new level of pay equity, unprecedented anywhere else in the football world. And the headline feature is that the men's and women's teams will now pool all World Cup prize money and split 50-50. First nation in the world to do this. Given that the prize money for the Men's World Cup is currently 7 times larger than that of the women's, this is some redistribution of wealth for World Cup players on both sides of the gender divide for now, one that hopefully will not only inspire other football associations to follow suit, but that will put pressure on FIFA to shrink the financial gap between the two tournaments. Now this deal has been announced, has it changed your worldview? Do you feel different? Do you feel mentally freer now this is behind you instead of an ongoing grind?
Yeah, I do definitely feel freer, both in time and in mental burden of trying to get this deal done. But it does feel very good to know that this deal is not just for the present, but it is for the future.
I'm fascinated, Tierna. You've given a huge amount of your free time, I'm imagining extremely limited free time, to essentially giving yourself a crash course, a JD, through Zoom after Zoom after Zoom. Your dad texted you, why is your name on this? Couple of years on with this success, this incredible moment, really, first of all, congratulations to you and to all the women who are going to benefit from this. But what have you learned about yourself in this process?
What I would say was kind of the biggest thing that I learned was I want to be at the table as much as possible when these decisions are being made, because I think it's incredibly important to be as informed and as involved as possible as a player. Because our opinion and our voice is very important.
And it's Caterina Macario who gets the 3rd goal for Lyon. This is absolutely ruthless from Lyon.
And we have just listened to history being made. Cat Macario becoming the first American, woman or man, to score in a Champions League final last weekend. Lyon 3, Barcelona 1. Genuinely an epic triumph. Let me be clear. If the men's final this weekend is half as good as the women's final last weekend, then my lord, we are in for a cracker. A huge triumph, not just for Macario, but also for the great Lindsey Horan. The US duo became the 4th and 5th American women to win the Champions League after an emphatic Lyon victory in Turin in front of an electric crowd of 32,000. So bloody happy for Lindsey, who's been in and out of the lineup all spring because of a knee injury. She gave a really beautiful interview after the match, talking about just how much the win meant to her.
Well, you can probably see it in my face. You know, this is what I dreamed of ever since I was a little girl, watching, the Men's Champions League, and now look at this stadium and what both Lyon and Barca brought. And winning a game like this and our performance and playing against such an incredible team, it's everything,
I want to break down the beats of this truly seismic rumble in a moment, but we need to acknowledge Alana. You, like Kat and Lindsay, elected to start your career off in France, forgoing the NWSL college draft and signing with PSG back in 2019. Can you talk about what inspired that decision? Because it is somewhat amazing.
I knew I needed a new environment. I wanted a change. I wanted to get out of my comfort zone. I think I didn't really understand how big of a jump that was, going to a new country, a new culture, a new language. Kind of just threw myself into the deep end and hoped that I would figure out how to swim. So I think those first few months were a whirlwind. I remember my first practice, I think we did a possession drill and the ball was moving so fast, I felt like I was just in a spin cycle. And I went home and I thought, okay, we're not where we want to be, but I can get there. From that moment on, it was kind of challenge after challenge, and every day I had an ability to go out and learn and fail and try again and, succeed.
I'm always blown away by this part of your story. You're French when you arrived in Paris. How would you describe the level of your conversational ability?
To be able to describe it, I had no ability. I knew nothing. So I went in very blind, very much, let's see what happens.
I just love that from a human perspective, just saying, that situation, I want to voluntarily put myself in that situation. And you arrive in practice, and you said to me when we first talked about it, you said, my first day of training, I had never seen anyone do these kind of things with the ball. And can you describe for us how football in France, tactically, how's it different to what we're used to in the United States?
I think, coming from the college system, and, our coach always kind of talked to us at Stanford, and he would always say, Tierna, find the formula. And so he kind of made it this almost like mathematics system of, if there's 3 players here and 1 step's here, numbers wise, this is the pass to play. And so I think, I kind of went into it with a bit of that. And when I got there, I think they were just so talented on the ball that, there was still a bit of that. If there's an overload here, of course you want to play over there. But they were able to get in and out of spaces that I had not really seen before. And you could pass them the ball into what didn't seem like really an open pass. And they would weasel their way out. And I was kind of like, first practice, like, yeah, if you can do that, I'll give you the ball wherever you want. So it was really just this learning process of kind of getting to know my teammates, getting to know just how good they were, and kind of saying, if you're comfortable in that space, I'm happy to give it to you.
You've got the language, you've got these I'm getting anxious thinking about the first practices and what you were witnessing. But there is a quote of yours that I love about the Champions League and just how special it was for you to play there. It actually echoes Lindsay Horan's comments. You said, if you'd told my younger self that grew up having watched men's games in that competition that I was going to get to walk out and play in games like that, I would never have believed it.
Sometimes you have to wait and reflect back to realize how special something was. I think that was one of those, in the moment, I knew just how important and kind of incredible it was in my journey. Lining up in the tunnel next to, my team of amazing players, and across the line from Chelsea, who also had amazing players, I think I kind of took a deep breath and thought, this is exactly what you've always wanted. This is where you've dreamed of being, and oh my gosh, we made it. I got to just feel too how proud I think my family was. I spent so many of my childhood weekends with my dad watching Champions League, watching soccer, and it was pretty much always men's because that's what we could get on TV. And I just kind of sat there and thought to myself, I can't imagine how he feels at home getting to watch this, and how proud he and my mom must be. I do think the Champions League is something that I'll definitely miss. We just right now don't have a competition quite like it in the US, and I think it's something that, fans maybe and people kind of start to talk about and get a little more buzz around, maybe a Club World Cup, something like that. But I think, it is something really special. And I think getting to go to the different countries, getting to play different styles of teams, really getting immersed in European football was something that I definitely miss.
To last weekend's final, and what a jaw-dropping performance by Lyon it was. They blew Barcelona's doors right off their hinges from the off, 3 up within 33 eye-popping minutes. Amandine Henry started things off with an absolute exclamation point of a goal. Essentially, she went SpaceX.
Henry came in on Pateas, and it's Henry with the effing. Oh, wow! Amandine Henry with a spectacular goal for Lyon. How much does that mean? That was a strike.
The legendary Ada Hegerberg added to the scoreline with a 23rd minute header before Kat Macario prodded home Lyon's third, becoming, and this deserves repetition because it's something the Smithsonian should be celebrating, the first American, female or male, ever to score in a Champions League final. May many follow in her footsteps. And I'm fascinated to listen to you both because you both know Kat Macario so bloody well. What a incredible talent she is. You played with Kat on the national team, you trained with her at college, 31 goals on the season, every kind of finish. What is it about her that makes her so elite?
Having played against her since I was 12, so she was she was on San Diego Surf when she moved from Brazil, and I was on my team Dienza Force, and we were kind of rivals. And so my coach, I remember he was very much into being a student of the game and scouting and video and, learning all the intricacies of the game. Being Spanish, he was very into that. And he specifically told me my role and my job. And I was like, well, who is this player that I now have to mark all of a sudden? And why are we throwing tactics out the window and man marking like we're in a basketball game? But it was for very good reason, because anytime you give her any little space, she would wiggle free and score a goal naturally. She's always been very special. And I do think that something that makes her so special is her ability to finish the technique that she finishes with. It's a technique that you see in the men's game much more than the women's game, but it's very hard to read her hips. Oftentimes, as a defender, what you try and do is you read the player's body language in order to figure out where they're going to shoot or pass the ball. But it's very hard to read where she's going to finish, because she can either finish like a far post ball, keeping her hips open, or she can like close her hips very quickly and finish near post. And I'm sure as she's a nightmare for defenders, she's also a nightmare for goalkeepers in a similar sense. I've had the pleasure of watching it many, many times over and over, both as a opponent and as a teammate.
Honestly, when I think of Kat, and T knows this, I always think of when Kat first came to Stanford, first day of preseason, and we're all kind of in sweat. It's probably like, it's hot, it's California, we're all moving our stuff in, and Kat shows up with her parents in this really beautiful dress, all done up kind of with her stuff, and I think we just thought, like, who is this girl? She just has kind of a wealth of talent where, you know, you stop one thing, all right, that's fine. She'll do something else, and she'll do it with the same amount of quality.
Barcelona managed to pull one back before half-time, but second half, try as they might, they could not dent Lyon's organised defence in the second half. And if Lyon weren't such an entertaining team to watch, there would be something almost just laughable about their continental dominance. This is their 6th Champions League title in 7 years, 8 total. Alana, you've played against them. Can you describe what that experience is like?
In having played against Barca and Lyon, I think I was sitting back watching that final like, thank goodness I don't have to run after those forwards on either team. So I think it was really exciting to kind of get to see kind of the new front runners on the world scene with Barca, and, you know, kind of the old timers with Lyon get to go at it. And, you know, I think you probably just saw a bit more of Lyon's experience in the way they handled that final. Getting the quick goal always helps, and then just being able to kind of pounce and build on that and ride out the rest of the game. But, you know, it just goes to show that these teams that really invest in the women's game, they pour their money into the marketing, into getting fans into the stadium, into, you know, paying the players and giving them the conditions that they deserve. You know, there's a reason that those two teams have excelled the way that they do. And I think it's a bit like the CBA. You know, you hope that movement is contagious. You hope that other teams, other clubs, other countries see it and say, you know what, we want to be just like that. I
got goosebumps. And I mean, between watching the Champions League final and then also watching Championship Sunday and everything that happened in the Premier League, this like overwhelming feeling became apparent that like I desperately want to win a club title with Chicago, with whatever team I'm on in the future, because it is such a special experience to win it with some of your closest friends, your teammates, with all of your fans and thousands of supporters. That's something that I desperately want to do. But it was a magnificent weekend of football, and that game was like such a pleasure to watch. It was entertaining from minute one.
Club World Cup, FIFA. I know you're listening to this podcast. Get on it. Do it now. And I need to know from you both, if we held a Women's Club World Cup tomorrow, who are you two backing for the trophy? Is it Lyon? I mean, how would a team like the Washington Spirit fare? What kind of a clash would it be?
You know, I would have to say, what about the rain? I have to back ourselves. I have the utmost confidence in our team.
Oh, the rain against Lyon proper, that would be almost the end of civilizations. I guess what I'm asking is, like, you guys look at it and are like, we in the NWSL, we could take Lyon in a heartbeat. Barcelona, that would be an incredible game. We could do it. How do you handicap the levels?
I would say they're very different games. And so I think it would actually be whichever team can tactically prepare best for the other team's game, just because you're not going to change your team to play that kind of game that you're going to face. So it's your level of preparedness. So if a Barcelona can prepare for the transition of a Washington Spirit, then like they might fare better. Or if Washington Spirit can prepare for the level of tiki-taka soccer that they're going to see against a Barcelona, they might fare better. But I wouldn't say that there's a shoe-in.
Shifting back to domestic shores and then WSL, what we got this past weekend was a vivid lesson in just how bloody hard it can be to win in this league. Portland Thorns going down at home at Providence Park against Houston Dash. Thorns have not had a win since their regular season opener back on April 30th, and the closest they've come this past month, I guess, has been the news that Crystal Dunn gave birth last weekend. Big love to baby Marcel. Gotham, unable to capitalise on a flurry of chances against Racing Louisville. They hit the woodwork 5 times, never managed to get the ball across the line. Racing Louisville, as Nadia Nadim prophetically projected when we recorded last week, have been on the up of late. The win against Gotham, their second in 5 days after a confident victory over San Diego. Rookie Savannah DeMello's free kick strike, one of the most soaring of the season so far.
Send Fox in. So there's 2 options. It's DeMello, rips it, Sheridan saves, but it goes in!
As professionals who live to shut out opponents, when you two see a goal like DeMello's, perfectly placed, dip, velocity, technique, do you tip your cap and you say, nobody could have defended that? Or as elite defenders, does it make your blood boil?
Well, for me, you have to take it one step back. Since it was a free kick, it's like, okay, well, how did that come about? Was it a center back? Was it me doing something stupid and like tripping a 9? Or was it a midfielder being lazy and not getting back in time? But I mean, for the free kick, the technicality of that and the execution of that, that's a tipping the cap. Like, there's nothing I could have done. Maybe, hopefully my keeper can save that, but like sometimes they can't. But it would have to go back to what happened right before and if we can solve that. And so for most situations, there's always a solve, whether it's in the immediate action or 6 steps before. But that's a bit of a hats off situation.
I think as a fan and a spectator, it's definitely a tip of the cap. It was an amazing strike. And then I think you go back into, okay, professional soccer player mode, and you think, okay, so we cannot foul them anywhere near our box. So just note that one for later.
Washington Spirit and Euro Reign Alana both frustrated on Sunday in a 0-0 draw. Spirit still struggling with post-Challenge Cup absences. They have your friend and my podcast co-host Andy Sullivan back. Should be on this very pod next week, and the team looks all the more solid for a return. But they're still juggling a lot of player injuries, and we saw an aggravated manager, Chris Ward, in his press conference go on blast. And when a coach turns the anger up to 11 in front of the media like that, how much does it deliver a message to the locker room?
The coach tends to be your emotional leader of your team. You know, I think they are the leader in all ways. You know, the examples that they set, the team follows. So I think to have your coach, you know, go out and put out that strong of a statement, you know, with that much passion and that much fire, I think it can only stand to kind of bring up the locker room to that level. You know, you always want your coach to be someone who's going to advocate for you and fight for you. And it's something that Laura Harvey here always says. You know, she's the first one to say, I will fight for you guys for whatever, you know, I think you deserve and for whatever I think is right. So I think that the more that the coaches can, you know, demand the conditions that they see that we need and that the league needs to get to, I think it's just better for everyone. And I think for the Washington locker room, I'm sure they're kind of fired up by that passion.
Your teammate Tierna Davidson back for the Red Stars on Sunday, coming off the bench in the second half after a long month out with concussion, and she wasted no time, delivering an assist and 2 goals to see the Red Stars to a confident 4-2 win against Orlando Pride. And Davidson, a jewel of a footballer, she has had a fascinating career progression from a player who emerged as a phenom to, if anything now, actually seems underrated.
Yeah, I mean, as with all best players, Mal's a joy to play with and a nightmare to play against. Luckily, I haven't had to actually play against her too many times because as long as I've been in the league, unfortunately, she's had a number of injuries. And I think that's part of what has led to her under market value. I think now she's finally fully healthy and her body feels good and she's not worrying about other stuff going on in her body and can just worry about playing on the field. And it definitely shows. I feel like she's playing with a new sense of confidence and freedom that I haven't seen in her in a while. She's faster with the ball nearly than she is without. It's something, it's like the Mal, Rose, they all kind of have this ability to just glide with the ball and it stick to your feet and then still make good decisions while moving incredibly quickly. And so to be able to come into the game, Seam 2 was opening up for us. That's her bread and butter, to get right into Seam 2, right between the defenders and the midfield, and just turn and face and be able to play good final balls and to be able to pick off balls in there and finish. So I really see all of her qualities just shining.
Just knowing Mal, I think we started playing together in the U15 national team. So obviously we saw her have a lot of early success, and it was something that, we as teammates at that level and with, the youth national team could only cheer her on. I think it was so incredible. Sometimes we would have camps that would overlap with older age groups or with the full team, and she would get pulled out to go to those, and, we'd get to go watch sessions. And I think sitting there watching and, seeing how good she was at that age and also being able to compete with the older players, with the full team, I think it was inspiring, and it was something that I looked at and saw like, yeah, I want to be able to do that. And, what does Mal do to get there? But her ability, like Tierna said, to get it in those spaces, to do the defensive work, to win it back, and then turn and run at players, I think that's always been there. And I think what she does really well is play to her strengths, and she knows her quality. She knows how good she is, and she's been doing that since she's been 15, 16. And so what you see now is just kind of the perfected craft of what she's always been good at.
And this weekend, your Challenge Cup winners, North Carolina Courage, who have not won since lifting that trophy, go down to Houston Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, streaming on Paramount Plus. We'll see if they can get their mojo back. And the Dash should be feeling pretty bloody good after their weekend win in Portland. Also coming up this weekend, Tierna's Red Stars play those Thorns at 8 p.m. Eastern Time this Saturday. That game streams on Twitch. Malpew versus the World. I'll always put my money on Malpew in that fight. And closing out the weekend, we have Kansas City versus Racing Louisville Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Paramount Plus. The Barbecue and Bourbon Derby. Angel City face Gotham for the first time ever, Sunday 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Paramount Plus. That is this weekend's marquee matchup. Angel City and that peerless home crowd. Gotham eager to start converting chances. But the game I'm most fascinated to witness, Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Double P, Paramount Plus. San Diego look to consolidate their lead out front when they take on Alana and the mighty OL Reign. And San Diego Wave, really one of the most startling stories of this season, the up-and-comer, the start-up, propelled by, you may have heard of her, Alex Morgan, who has been absolutely sensational, scoring a league-leading 6th goal of the season last weekend. Honestly, been magical to watch Alex just thrive at her transcendent level again. You both know her so well. Can you describe what it's like trying to stop her?
To stop Alex Morgan, first thing you got to think of is she going to run in behind? Loves the long ball from the center back, getting in behind, and then once she's in behind, it's clinical finishes. Like you've got no chance there. And then second thing you've got to think of is how quickly she pulls the trigger when she's shooting. She's very good at just getting a little half touch, half step away from the defender, pulling the trigger, and it getting on frame with a lot of power and a lot of precision. And that's a nightmare for us because we're always having to react based off of their movements. It's very hard to react in an anticipatory way because then usually they'll try and change up what they're doing. And something that I feel that Alex does well and is very annoying as a center back is she actually defends, and she will be very annoying and consistent and just breathing down your neck all the time. So there's no chance as a center back to relax. And that's something that you want in your 9. That's something that is great because then she can pick off passes, she could strip players, and get herself in on goal. And it's something that keeps her very dangerous.
I think one of the most demoralizing things as a defender is knowing that the forward you're playing against, when they get it in a certain space with Alex, if she gets it kind of on that left side in the box, it's going to be a goal. And so I think that is something that's always in your head when you're playing against, a forward like Alex or, a lot of the clinical forwards that we have on the national team and in the league is you always have that in the back of your head and you can't really ever not think about it.
You are both elite defenders. Mentally, when you're about to take the field against one of the world's elite attackers, as deep competitors both, do you relish that opportunity? Or is there an element of, well, okay, we're going to do
I think it's a mix of I'm excited for this, and it's also a mix of like this is going to test your skills, so like you better be freaking up for it.
I think we have to frame it as an opportunity. I think something that we both love is learning, and I think those are the games you learn. Those are the opportunities you have to go out, test your skills, and see where you're at, have a moment to self-reflect. So I think that's why we play. We play to get better. We play to have those opportunities. We play to test ourselves against the best players in the world. And I think, you do relish those moments.
To friendship, to learning, I gotta say, I genuinely cannot wait for this weekend's slate of games, and visit paramountplus.com/MIBTWG to try 1 week of Paramount Plus free on us, and you catch every kick of the ball in NWSL this weekend. And before we close out for the week, I want to give the last word to both of you and ask you to close us out on a note of optimism, because this is a dark world. There is so much profound challenge all around us, and I do love to end with a shot of joy and hear from you something that's brought you joy this week. It could be a person, a place, a thing inside the world of football or outside, just something, anything that made you feel good.
One of the biggest pick-me-ups this week in the state of Washington, the sun has finally come out. I spent the entire winter here with gray skies and clouds and rain, and it has finally cracked the 70s, so I am over the moon. I could not be happier with that.
The sun, undefeated. Tierna, last word to you.
I am personally so excited for us to be playing at home. As an injured player, I can't travel, so I'm very excited to be able to cheer my team on in person. I'm about 2 months out from my surgery. Rehab is starting to get a little bit boring, but I'm making the most of it, celebrating the small things like being able to walk up and down the stairs now. So these are the new exciting things in my life. But it offers a different perspective being injured, and especially knowing that you're not going to be on the field for a number of months, for a whole season, allows for me at least to become a bit more of a student of the game, to kind of return back to my youth club days where I spent a lot of time learning about the game and not just playing it. And I think that sometimes because we are so often playing, traveling, going to national team camp, coming back, playing more games for the NWSL teams, like it is hard to actually learn by not playing. And so I think that's something that I get to experience now for the next couple of months. But it also is a time to be able to get my body right physically, whether it's this injury or other things that I've been dealing with, and be able to kind of put my best foot forward physically. So I think my body's going to thank me for that.
Well, we wish you Godspeed in that journey. All I can say is that the game of football is so much better when you are playing on the field within it, Tierna. But it's been a joy to listen to you today.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
And Alana Cook, I cannot wait to watch you against San Diego. It's been an absolute joy to be with you.
Thanks, Raj.
That's it for the women's game this week. We will be back next Thursday. Huge thanks to our producer, as ever, Miranda Davis, and the remarkable Sophie Gator, our editor. We will be back next week with the aforementioned Andy Sullivan and the single greatest deliverer of pre-game hype talks, Megan Klingenberg. Kling. Until then, courage. If you like our show, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. Helps so bloody much. Episodes of Men in Blazers are available on Amazon Music or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to hear new episodes ad-free, you can subscribe to Wondery Plus in Apple Podcasts or the Wondery app. Another way you can support our show is by filling out a survey at wondery.com/survey. Courage.